All right, brother.
What's up, man?
Ready?
Yeah, let's go. Let's get
All
it.
right, so episode 1 in studio, in person,
I'm honored.
dedicated to probably the OG Patriot. And I think we're going to learn together of why that is, because a lot of people think that the OG Patriots go back to 2020. It goes well before that, and I think you're probably
I'm not
the
the
best
OG,
example.
I'm not the OG Patriot. I would go back to Ron Paul. Frankly, it's one of the
Well, we're
legit
going to get into that
OGs.
because,
Right.
Ron Paul, you actually,
I worked for
he
him.
mentored you, right? Because you
Well,
worked for him.
I worked for him. I thought he was an American hero. He still is.
Yeah, so before we get into all of that,
Right.
we got to know who Stewart Rhodes is.
Okay.
Elmer Stewart Rhodes.
Right. I go by my middle name for obvious reasons, because Elmer Stewart Rhodes III. Elmer's a family curse. So when I was a kid, my nickname was Sonny. But then when I got in the Army, the guys were like, "Hey, we're not going bar hopping with a guy named Elmer, so we're going to call you Stewart."
So the goal of this interview is to give you as much time as possible to tell America who you are, basically as deep as you want to go from start to finish, and what's going to be coming down the pike in the future for you,
Right.
as well as anything that you're involved in. So let's.
Okay. Well, I think the bigger point is what I can do to help explain, the bigger picture about January the 6th and why they were all political prisoners that needed to be pardoned. I think that was absolutely the right thing to do. I'm still waiting on a pardon. I was commuted. There's 14 of us that are commuted, still waiting on a pardon. But of course, we're grateful to President Trump. I was just freed on Monday night, so last Monday night. So it's just awesome to be.
It's been what, 10 days?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
11?
So,
February 1st.
Right.
2025.
No, it was January 20th, not January 20th. So now we're on day 11? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us, Stewart,
So,
where were you born? Who is Stewart Rhodes? And you have as much time as you need.
Okay, so I was born in Fresno, California. My mother she came from a background of migrant farm workers. She's half white, half Mexican. And her father died in World War II. He was a crew member, I believe it was B-17, but it might be a B-24. I'm not sure yet. Still trying to figure that out. But he was a crew member in World War II and did not survive the war, so she never knew her father. And she was raised entirely in a culture of migrant Mexican-American farm workers. So tough upbringing. My grandmother married a Filipino when my mother was 10 years old, Bartolito, and so that became her father. And that's the only grandpa I ever had, growing up. My dad's side of the family was Michigan auto workers, like engine factory workers from Michigan,
Right.
and horsemen. My dad was a horse trainer and blacksmith too. So he was in the Marine Corps. That's when they met. They went on a blind date. He was 29 Palms down there in California, and that's they met on a blind date. And thereafter came my sister. My sister was born on 29 Palms, actually, and I was born the next year, 1965.
1965. That's where it all begins.
That's right. So working
What day?
April 29th, 1965.
April 29th, 1965.
Right. So, working class background, military service, both sides of my family. So I thought it was my responsibility to do the same, follow their footsteps. So I turned 17. I did a late entry program, went into the Army at 18, Fort Benning basic training, infantry school, airborne school. And I was slotted for, got a shot at SF.
1983?
1983, yeah.
So 1983, you went through basic at Sand Hill, right?
Sand Hill, that's right, yeah.
Guess what? I went to basic and AIT on Sand Hill as well.
Oh, yeah, what year?
1998.
Okay.
So that would have been, 15 years later.
You make me feel really old, man. But that was after the barracks was brand new back then. Sand Hill was brand new barracks. So, but yeah, 1983. This is during Reagan. Great.
Do you remember what company?
Charlie Company.
Charlie, which?
Gosh.
I was Delta 150.
I think we were
Delta Dragon.
I'm not sure. We're Charlie something. It's just been so long. So, but that was during, Reagan was building back up the military. And at that time, they were building back up SF instead of giving guys unusual off the street a slot or to try out for SF. Because usually they don't do that, right? You have to be an NCO with more experience. So I got my shot, made it through first phase at Camp McCall, patrolling, land navigation, wilderness survival, all that stuff. We're pulling out of helicopters. No problem. In second phase, I'm a weapons guy. I've been shooting since I was a kid. But they said, oh, your test scores are too high. just for be a weapons guy, we're going to put you in combo school. I was like, no. So they put me in there to learn. First thing you got to learn is Morse code. So I'm there tapping out Morse code. You got to send and receive your own messages.
You got to memorize a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's just you got to be able
quick too.
you have to be send and receive with few errors. And I was just not mature enough at that time. I was just too immature to sit there. I was bored to death. So I really regret it. But I didn't make it on the final exam because I was receiving too many errors. And so there I washed out in second phase.
That was 83 as well?
Yeah, well, 83, 84. It was 84, yeah. So before that, we went up to Pineland, and we were the indigenous personnel for the third phase guys. I got to experience that. So I got a good overview of how SF works. I didn't make it, so I don't reclaim that, but I understand it. And later on, I would model a lot of what we did in Oath Keepers on the SF model of being a force multiplier. So
right.
But yeah. So then I wound up going to went into Ranger RIP program at Fort Lewis, Washington to go through Ranger training and get a shot at Rangers. And I was the best runner in our class, but I hit a foxhole on a dark run early in the morning and twisted my knee. That was that MCL tear right there. Twisted my knee. I was like, oh shit. And I got to wait and cycle back through. And then a new scout company from the 9th Division at Fort Lewis came in and said, hey, we're long range reconnaissance scouts. Mm-hmm. Basically the takeover from the LRPs. 9th Division was a LRPs back in Vietnam. So they restarted a new program, which came to be known later on as long range scouts, long range reconnaissance scouts. So 5-man teams, parachuting in, spying on the bad guys, reporting back. So I went and joined that company. And I figured, they told me, hey man, you should come with us, hang out for a while, and later on we'll get you another shot at SF or Rangers. Just come. I healed up and trained with them and worked with them. And that's where I had my parachuting accident. We were doing rough terrain parachuting, where like the smoke jumpers do. You know what that is? It's where you put a Kevlar suit on and a helmet and you jump into the trees on purpose.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
It's really, well, smoke jumpers still do it. They do. So we sent 2 sergeants to smoke jumper school to go learn how to do that, and they came back and showed us how to do it. And it works great in daylight. So we did that. You land on the tree like that. You apex the top of the tree. Then you have a big bag on your leg here and a Kevlar suit with a big rappel rope. You tie up and you rappel down. Tie up to your harness and unhook and then rappel down.
Okay.
And it's great at daylight, but then our CO decided to do it at night. So we did a night jump off the back of a Chinook, and then we can't see the treetops. So a bunch of us landed on the sides of the trees. We couldn't apex the trees, and that's what happened to me. Landed on the side of the tree, was hanging there. Then we rappelled down, and my chute tore loose, and I dropped and landed on my ass about 75 feet. Ooh. Nice compression fracture to the spine.
Yeah, good thing you survived. I mean,
right?
That's ridiculous.
Right, it is. So
there's no way most people would survive that.
Oh, there are a few other. You're dragging through the tree, so it helped. So a few guys
canopy was still dragging, right?
Yeah, canopy's still dragging. So we, a lot of us got injured. A few of us were in the hospital, but mine was the worst one. And that was it for me. That was my end of my military career. So I got a spinal fusion and 2 steel rods. I've had since then, since 1986. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's my end of my military career there.
So then you were disabled.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a disabled veteran. Yeah, 50% rated disabled with the VA. Got out. And later on, I went to the smoke jumper school. I gave my kids a tour through the smoke jumper school when we were living in Montana. And I asked the tour guide, who was one of their instructors. I said, "Hey, you guys ever do this at night?" He's like, "Fuck no, you can't see what you're doing at night."
So the risk level
I was vindicated. Our CO was an idiot. So nice guy, but definitely an idiot for having us do that at night.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I was disabled. Got out of the military. In Vegas, I was working as a concealed carry instructor and managing a gun shop during the day. And at night, I was parking cars. Parking cars at the Horseshoe Hotel, which is not bad money in Vegas back then. So then I finally decided I want to go to college, and went to the VA, voc rehab. I said, I want to go to college. They said, well, what about air conditioning school, HVAC? I was like, no, man, I want to go to college. So I said, just give me the.
Tell us a little bit about voc rehab. I'm familiar with the program, but for those that don't know what voc rehab is, what is that?
Well, so it's the for disabled veterans, it's a chance for you to get trained in a skill like a
so vocational rehabilitation, right?
Right. So you go to a trade school. That's what they wanted me to do because it's cheaper, of course, for them. But I wanted to go to college. So they will pay for your college if they know your college material. Some guys start going to college and just drop out or whatever. So they're skeptical. So I get it. So I took the exams though, and they said, "Oh, okay, you really are college material." I scored pretty well on the exams, the aptitude tests. Mm-hmm. And so they gave me a shot at community college first. So I started at community college of Southern Nevada. Got straight A's there. Then I transferred to UNLV, got straight A's there in the UNLV honors program. And it's a state school. A lot of folks, a lot of folks look down their nose at it, but we had a pretty good honors program. It's pretty good. So
So what motivated you to study, physically, obviously explain at a high level, and then also intellectually? You started showing and proving yourself at a high level in college.
Oh yeah, well,
What's the motivation behind that?
It's interesting because my family background was no one had any respect at all for college. The mindset of both my mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family is that work ethic is it. And college is for spoiled rich kids, for spoiled lazy rich kids. And so I had to kind of overcome that. I never thought about college until, I was there in Las Vegas parking cars. I started thinking to myself, what am I going to do with myself? And I just started becoming more involved in politics, and I wanted to go to law school. So that's when I decided to go to community college and start working my way up the ladder.
So you already knew you wanted to go to law school, so you had to get
high grade. Actually, at first I wanted to be a history teacher. That's what I first wanted to do, is be a history teacher. So I did some for a while there. I did some substitute teaching. I figured out pretty quick that our school system's pretty messed up, and I really don't want to spin my wheels trying to save those kids in that environment. It's just too far gone, I did some substitute teaching for middle school, and that was a nightmare. Clark County, Nevada.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Wanted to hear it from you.
So, but yeah, so I did really well in college, and I graduated summa cum laude, which is the top of the class. And after that, I wanted to go to do my Washington, D.C. experience.
You graduated with a bachelor's in
political science.
Political science.
Yeah, because you're doing, pre-law basically. So a lot of political philosophy. We studied, of course, Aristotle and just the whole spectrum of political philosophy. Good education. I thought it was pretty good back then. Now it's a nightmare. I can't even imagine what it'd be like now, because I got straight A's even with leftist professors. I had one professor, a sociology professor, an outright communist. So we butted heads like crazy in the class. But at least
even back then. So this would have been late.
This was 95.
Oh, this was later. Okay.
Yeah. So like 95.
So this was in the middle of Clinton's presidency.
Right. That's right. So, and I was the president of the Political Science Honor Society on campus. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
So you've held leadership positions in every instance, basically from college until today.
Yeah. I was good a squad leader in basic, which is not a big deal, but it's cool. So yeah, I've always gravitated towards, by default, like in the Political Science Honor Society. The guy who was the president was graduating and vacant slot. I ran for it and won. So
nice.
Yeah, I did a good job.
All right, so you finished up political science.
Right.
Brings you into late 90s.
Yeah. Well, I worked as a professional sculptor there for a while too.
Wow. So he had an eclectic background.
Right. So in fact, I've got a picture if you want to see it.
Yeah,
you want to see my sculpture? I'll show it to you. Yeah.
How did you even start into that?
Well, my mom was
to this point. There's nothing that you've explained to me that has anything to do with art.
Right. Well, I've been an artist all my whole life, just drawing and painting on my own. And my mom was a commercial real estate agent in Vegas, and she had a new client that had just come from L.A., and he ran a commercial sculpture company. Is what he did for the hotels, for Las Vegas hotels.
Okay.
And he said, "Hey, she was helping him find his warehouse for his production area, and he said, I need a sculptor." And she said, "I got one for you." And she just said, "Hey, you want to try this?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure. I never sculpted before." So I went ahead and tried out for it, and I got the position. And that's one of the ones I did.
Is that you right there?
That's me with hair, yeah, with more hair. That's that's Liberty Leading the People. That's Delacroix's painting from the French Revolution, and they wanted that in a sculpture. So I did that life size. Yeah.
I'll need to get a copy of that and post it up.
Yep. So I did.
How many have you done?
I did her, and I did a Minuteman for the MGM theme park back to back. She's facing one way, and he's facing the other way.
Is that still somewhere?
Who knows where it wound up? Because the MGM theme park got shut down. Probably someone's backyard somewhere, So
you should track that down.
That's not bad though, huh?
That's not too shabby. You did it from scratch?
Yeah, that's clay. It's clay on a steel armature frame, and I used a live model. She posed for it. So yeah, it turned out pretty good.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Very Thomas Jefferson of the modern era.
I'm a Renaissance man. So, and then after I worked for Ron Paul, I did some art again. I'll tell you in a minute. But yeah, so I graduated from college, and I wanted to go experience DC. but I wanted to work for someone that's a constitutionalist. And the only one I could find in Congress at the time was Ron Paul. He's the most consistent constitutionalist.
Texas congressman from which district in Texas?
14th district in Texas.
And that's where?
Way down on the coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it Galveston?
Freeport, I think it is.
Freeport. Okay.
Yeah. So I flew out. I just cold called them with a letter and said, "Here's why I want to work for you. I'm a libertarian, constitutionalist, and I don't want to work for anybody else in D.C. because to me, it's a matter of my oath.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to work for somebody I know is going to violate the Constitution. He's not going to do it." So they liked that. So I flew out and interviewed with him. Sat down on his couch. Nice guy. We just chatted. He's real low key and how young he is. Yeah, like a grandpa. So. So they hired me to be their legislative correspondent.
Where was the interview? Was it in D.C. here? Or?
No, in Texas, at his home in Texas. Okay. I flew down there and talked to his chief of staff, and then I met with him for a few minutes in his home. Yeah. So they hired me. So
what did they hire you as?
Legislative correspondent. Lowest on the totem pole.
No, you have interns, so that's even lower.
That's true, yeah. So
but that's not
lowest paid staff position. answering the mail. Yeah.
So yeah, what are some of the responsibilities of a legislative correspondent?
Answer the mail, answer the emails, write out the form letters, and then he approves them and signs them.
With constituents primarily?
Oh yeah, with constituents, right. And then people come in, they visit the Capitol, they want to come do a tour, things like that. So
what's
we say hi to
the
them.
most notable experience when you were serving as legislative?
That was in the middle of the whole Clinton cigar Monica Lewinsky fiasco. That's
at the height of it.
So lots of emails and letter answering about that.
Do you remember what committees he was on at the time?
I really don't, actually.
Okay.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
What about the worst day? The worst day as a legislative correspondent?
Well, I mean, the infighting on the staff was the big thing that kind of soured me on politics for a good 10 years. Just, they're good people, but man, they just could not get along. Just infighting, just like turf battles between this staff member and that staff member. And it was kind of an eye opener that even you would think that, hey, we're all ideologically in line. We're here to work together, but still you're going to have that. And we see it all the time. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
So, but it soured me on politics for about a good decade. I didn't get involved in politics again until college with the political science club. And then when Ron Paul, when he ran in 2008 again. So.
All right. So legislative correspondent, what year was that?
That was 1998, 99.
So 1998, 99, we're getting into the end of the Clinton second term, right? And we're gearing up towards another presidential
Bush is coming around the corner, right?
Campaign for, I guess there's a primary for both sides because at this point,
right,
Clinton can't run again.
So I went back to Vegas, and I was at that time concentrating on studying for my LSAT to get into law school.
The law school admissions test.
That's it, LSAT. So I did the Kaplan program and boosted my score. Just trained, just studied and trained.
Yeah, I didn't.
I raised my score. I raised my score by about 8 points. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it helped. Yeah, definitely. So, but while I was doing that, I was working as an artist at the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas. They needed.
So you upgraded from parking cars to being an artiste.
Artiste. Well, I just kind of fell into that one too. I just went into the Mirage looking for a job, and they saw my resume that I'd been a sculptor, and then the lady, the hotel manager, said, "Hey, you're an artist, right?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I need an artist in the dolphin habitat in the gift shop." And what it was painting tourist names and animal shapes, like 2 dolphins jumping in the air with a sunset in between as an A, things like that. Mm-hmm. Killer whale would be a C, So you just sit there all day and just paint people's names, whatever they want, in animal shapes. So I did that for a year. Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of fell into that.
Totally different. I would never think of that.
Yeah.
That you had that in your background.
You've seen that, right?
I don't think anybody has probably ever heard this.
I dipped my brush.
Have you shared this on any
a little bit
show?
Yeah, but not most recently because how they are just too fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of stumbled into doing art again, and I might do that again. I learned how to tattoo when I was in prison. Actually,
it's therapeutic, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm always been an artist. Like in prison, I would draw a lot. And I started painting. They have a rec room with painting stations. I started painting again.
Oh wow!
So then I started learning how to tattoo.
Did you do anything on there?
I did some of this one. Yeah.
Well, tell us what you got for tattoos before we move on.
So my jailhouse tattoos. First one I got was this one. That's the Statue of Liberty with her hands over her face, like I can't believe this shit. That's what that one is.
When did you get that one?
I got that one about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he went. This is an old airborne tattoo. It's been there for a while. But then
let's start out with the first one you got and work our way.
So this one was the first jail tattoo I got.
Okay.
You talking about inside or outside?
Outside, in any capacity.
Okay. So my first outside tattoo was the Oath Keeper tattoo on my right shoulder. This one. That's Oath Keepers. And then I got.
Is that the Tree of Liberty?
Yeah. Well, no, it's the Don't Tread on Me snake, right?
Okay.
Don't step on snake. So, and then I got my airborne tattoo. My mom did not like tattoos. While she was still alive, I didn't get any tattoos. So when she passed away in 2010, that's when I got this one after that, airborne tattoo.
Okay.
And then, that's
Death from Above?
Yep, Death from Above. And then I got this one. This was actually done by another Oath Keeper. So Robert Menuda, he's one of my J6, co-defendants basically. But he had been a tattoo artist in New York, and when Cuomo did the shutdown order in New York, Robert Menuda said, "Screw you, I'm going to open my tattoo shop back up." And that was his first customer when he opened his tattoo shop back up.
What's his name again?
Robert Menuda.
Big
guy, yeah, with a beard. Robert Menuda, yeah.
What's his background? Is he originally?
Well, he was a tattoo artist.
No, he's not. He wasn't born in the U.S., but was he?
Robert Menuda? Oh no, he's
okay. I'm thinking of someone else then.
Okay. Yeah, he was a tattoo artist in New York. He also had been an EMT, so he joined Oath Keepers, and he was part of our security teams, different things. But he did that pretty good.
Get the We the People.
Yeah, We the People.
Get the preamble right there.
Yeah, pretty small. You can actually read that preamble. It's pretty good work. He does really good work. So he's a tattoo artist in New York and Texas. So, thankfully he just got pardoned too. So I'll hopefully be able to reunite with him in Texas and get some more work done by him,
Now, I see some air parachutes right there.
So I had
any one of them there with where you got stuck in the trees?
I'll have to add that later. So when I was in prison, they did this one got done first with the Statue of Liberty. And then I had.
That's basically the Lady Liberty.
Right.
Putting her hands in her face with complete embarrassment of what she just observed over the last several years.
Right. I can't believe this. Like, what's going on in my country?
I agree.
Yeah. And we had flames.
Let me just inject here. Stewart, now we've talked about this last few days when we've been talking. What happened the last 4 years, I'm going to try to keep it cool here. An absolute embarrassment.
Well, it's worse than an embarrassment.
I was embarrassed to be an American citizen during this period of time. And I'm to blame just as much as anybody else. Because I've been in the system quarter of a century.
Right.
So I take blame.
I
apologize to you.
We're all to blame, actually.
That our government did this to you.
Well, I don't look at it like that. I look at it like
I'm a part of the problem for allowing the problem to persist.
I think we all are. So we're all on the hook for our country turning like it did.
Yep.
So we have to fix it. That's been my mindset for a long time. Is that we're on this planet at this time for a reason. We're Americans for a reason, and it's up to us to fix it. So our kids don't have to fix it, and our grandkids don't have to fix it. It's on us. It's our turn in the barrel.
Well, the last 10 days have been pretty good.
Yeah, we did pretty good. Yeah, absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
All right, so we were talking about the.
Oh, so I added these parachutes just because I wanted to, fill the sleeve, and
I like that.
Yeah, it worked pretty good. Took that off of an actual photo of a parachute jump. One of the guards was kind enough to bring it up for me and print it up for me. So, and then on this side, got my J6 political prisoner tattoo here.
POW MIA?
Yeah.
No, POW J6.
J6, yeah, with the capital in there. You were not forgotten. And we still have guys. Jeremy Brown, for example, is still a political prisoner. It's unfortunately, sadly. So
it's ridiculous. Yeah. They're still trying to fight and
still trying to hold on to them.
Continue their bogus narrative.
Yeah, get their pound of flesh.
What do you got right there?
So this is the man himself. After President Trump was shot and reacted like a warrior and put his fist in the air, I commemorated that by having a tattoo artist in my unit. That's him right there, Butler, with his hand and fist in the air. And the first artist that did it came out kind of light.
Wait, what's this right here? Oh, that's the
bullet holes
right there.
Those are bullet holes. There's 6 bullet holes. There's one on the watch there too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So 6 bullet holes for the 6 shots that they fired in that day. And I say they for a good reason. I don't think that was a lone gunman. I really don't.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's when he won the election, I think.
Yeah.
That day.
Literally, I think within an hour, Elon Musk said, I'm endorsing
Right.
President Trump.
Because he proved up.
Yeah.
You can't fake that. Either you react like a man or you react like a bitch. That was an
immediate reaction. That was an innate, instinctual.
Yeah.
That's his ethos. Warrior ethos.
Yeah.
Even though he's never served. I mean, it's impressive.
It's built in. It is impressive. He dropped to the ground like he was trained to do. He dropped to the ground behind that skirting, which is bulletproof, right, around the podium. But then he wanted to pop right back up.
Now, I think first thing went to his mind is like, no, I look like I can't look weak in this moment. Because he's assessing himself probably like,
Well, it was right from the drop to the ground. I mean, I would drop to the ground too if I'm under fire. It's the smart thing to do. But then, he wanted to pop back up and put his fist in the air.
Just completely exhibit strength.
He's a warrior. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like George Washington level or Teddy Roosevelt level coolness under fire. Because you can listen to him on the audio. It's like, all my shoes. He's worried about his friggin' shoes. Yep. He got his shoes knocked off when he dropped and all dogpiled them.
Yeah, he's like,
where's my shoes?
Consolidate, reorganize.
Yeah.
We just got into a gunfight.
Give me my friggin' shoes.
Let's get everything back on track and let's show a force.
That's it. Yeah.
Courage. Yeah. Total courage under fire. Absolutely.
Fantastic. I mean, the smart thing to do would be to pull him off the stage, drop him off the ground. Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad that it happened the way it did. It was meant to happen that way. Because people don't know if they know this, but he was going to be shot right just to the rear like that.
Yeah.
And all he did was turn his head a little bit and it hit his ear instead.
So back in February of last year, I was in studio with Alex Jones. We were just kind of wargaming what the deep state could potentially do. From most probable to most dangerous. And then, most probable was the lawfare, escalatory lawfare, and then political maneuvering, etc. Within the law and then beyond. And then from there, and they exhibited all that. But then what it comes down to, what happens when he basically secures the nomination?
They got to shoot him.
They have to do something well beyond what the normal scope of political activity is. And Alex agreed with me. He's like, and same thing with Tucker Carlson. Everybody was saying, like, I'm not advocating for any violence. But at the end of the day, these demons have already exhibited that nothing is off the table.
No, we did it a long time ago. Robert Kennedy, same thing.
Right. Kennedy.
He got the nomination.
Kennedy.
As soon as they knew he had the nomination in California,
immediately
that night he was shot. The day he got the nomination.
And so we were forecasting that once they realize they can't stop his nomination, they're going to go to extreme measures. The only thing that kept him from being assassinated, like you just said, is when you look at the tape. He actually, after the trigger pull, is when he moved his head.
Yeah. Grace of God.
In that literally 1/8 of a second, it was poof, turn, lean. And that got him in his ear instead of his temple, basically.
Right. Well, probably right about here.
Behind the temple, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, his head would have completely exploded.
It was the grace of God. That's an act of God. Like he said. It's just like George Washington being shot, like multiple balls musket balls going through all his clothing, and horses shot him from underneath him, multiple times, but he's never ever hit. Same thing with President Trump. That was an act of God. He's got a higher purpose.
And that's why he got the tattoo.
Well, he knows it. He was saved by God that day, and yeah, exactly. That's why I got the tattoo to commemorate that. And it says fight.
Yeah,
that's what he said.
Fight.
Jumped up. Fight. Yeah. And that day in my unit, man, it was a trip because I'm in my room in my cell reading a book, and this guy knocks at the door. He's like, "Hey, what?" He said, "They just shot Trump." I was like, "Come on, man! He's blowing smoke." And I walk out, and I'm like, "Oh shit! It's all over the news." And everyone in the whole unit is sitting there watching, and they watched the video of him. They kept playing it over and over again. They watched him, jumping up and putting his fist in the air. And they're like, "Damn, Trump's an OG."
For those that don't know what that is, it's original
gangster. That's like the highest compliment in prison. He's an OG. He's a legit OG. And we had this one guy on my unit named Tiny. It's not Tiny at all. It's an ironic nickname. Big black guy that's, in for murder. He's got like multiple bodies behind him in penitentiaries and stuff. But nice guy. Him and I would sit and watch MMA together. I used to train jiu-jitsu and all that kind of stuff. So we used to sit there. He used to be a boxer. I trained jiu-jitsu. But anyway, Tiny's like, no question. They're both like, yeah, that's right. Because if Tiny says no question, that's it. It's settled. Trump's a legit OG with stamp of approval, from the man.
I think that's when the tide turned completely.
Oh, totally. That's when he won the working class.
They decided, like, we can't do this again.
They tried again. Yeah. Don't tell me that wasn't also
invincible.
a setup. The easiest way to kill somebody is withhold protection. That's
Yeah.
the easiest way to kill a prominent man.
Or conduct a coup like on January 6th is withhold protection. But we're getting our head
Right,
ourselves
exactly.
here.
But no, I think that's when Trump won. I mean, he probably would have won anyway because of the absurdity of the Biden administration and everything they'd done to President Trump. In fact, when he was made a felon in New York, that also boosted his popularity among the inmates. Like, hey, he's a felon, man. He's one of us now. Yeah. And I think people around the country realize that, okay, this is all crap. They're doing this just because they're afraid of him. And why are they afraid of him? What's going on that makes them so afraid of him? They start listening to him and say, okay. And he's not bitching out. He's not backing down. He didn't back down once about the election. He continued to say it was stolen because it was. Yeah. It was illegal and unconstitutional. He never once backed down. Never once backed down to any of this crap they threw at him. He just stood his ground the whole time. And so you can't look at that and go, okay, it can't just be ego. It can't just be, I don't want to admit I was wrong or anything like that. No, it's something a lot deeper. And he's a fighter and he's resilient, but it's a fighter with a mission. And his mission is legitimately MAGA, make America great again, save this country. So I think he proved up under pressure, So when you find out what a man really is, and Tiny and I had a conversation about that. Does pressure shape the man or reveal his character? Does it shape character and strengthen character, or does it reveal character? That was the question. And I asked Tiny that. So let me ask you that. Do you think pressure and adversity shapes character or reveals character? What do you think?
No, I think it reveals it.
That's right.
Because
that's what Tiny said too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you're spending, just like in Special Forces selection, just like in all these different training programs in elite entities, units, or whether it's Yale Law School,
right?
When you have to push harder than you normally have experienced in your life, whether it's by staying awake, studying content material, not sleeping, food deprivation, sleep deprivation,
right?
Massive amounts of stress,
enduring solitary confinement like I did,
and and when you have to interact with other people, like your homeostasis or your baseline is shown. Like your core foundational values, principles, and how you interact with people are clearly shown. You can't fake that, right?
Right.
And so you couldn't fake what he did.
No, you can't. You can't fake that. That's right. Agreed. You can't fake that. And different guys have different breaking points.
And the other thing you can't fake is, I saw you right when you got out of jail, right? And so I would expect that people that have been in prison, wrongly accused, just the level of resentment, anger, disgust, you came out with, and you did that that press conference that of everybody swarming you.
Right.
I came a couple seconds
later. That was
later.
your fault. Oh, you mean outside the jail?
Right outside the jail.
Right, outside the DC jail. Right.
And that was the first time I'd ever physically met you. And
well,
so your demeanor, your delivery, just the calm, cool, collected manner. It goes back to what we were talking about. That's your core values and how you live your life. And so, going back to what you said, the question was, does adversity
shape character or reveal character?
No, it reveals it. And
so I think so too.
I think our discussion here is going to reveal, not only, if you haven't figured it out so far, you're a powerhouse intellectual. We haven't even gotten into Yale Law School, by the
way. That was an experience. Yeah.
Your historical understanding of this country and applying it kind of what's going on today. I'll say this on camera, which people are going to be surprised. You're probably the first person I've met, other than maybe a General Flynn, that has an understanding of our nation historically, constitutional principles, and our individual liberties way more than I've been able to read and understand.
So I'm not sure that's
true.
You're
kind of like
but thanks.
No, it is. It is.
I think you're selling yourself short.
No, very few people that understand what's going on in our country.
That's true. That was what's funny because
there are a few. I think you're one of them.
When I was doing that with the media, I'm like, who's this dude? Who's this bald dude right in front of me? I didn't even recognize you. He's standing right in front of me. He's like, yeah. And what about this and that? I'm like, yeah. We're like bouncing off each other. We're giving each other fist bumps. I didn't realize it was you.
Yeah, you're shell shocked. Like go from solitary to a complete sensory overload just like that.
Right. Well, actually, I wasn't in solitary at Cumberland. I was at FCI Cumberland when I was released. Okay. But I'd spent over a year in solitary before that. Yeah. So I got released.
Did you have to learn how to speak with other people?
Yeah. It was true.
Use your because you're probably not talking to yourself.
That's true. Yeah, it was weird.
It's difficult, right? Because
Yes,
you're using your vocal cords. It's literally new parts of your body that need to relearn how to actually move.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I got out of practice. A lot of times I feel like I had marbles in my mouth. I still feel that way. Like I'm not used to speaking like this. So I'm getting back into my norm, which was speaking a lot. So yeah, it's been a trip. But yeah.
Right. So let's we went on a tangent, which I wanted to actually.
Right. Yeah.
With the tattoos. Where do we?
I mean, they all have meaning to me. I don't put anything in my body that doesn't have pretty deep meaning.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
No,
about
absolutely.
it.
I mean, this is basically a timeline of your life, right?
Right.
Has
So on this one,
meaning.
Since I'm still learning how to tattoo, but I went and did the shading around the fight, and I did the shading on the wrist up here, and I decided to add a little button to his collar. So, but this was done by another artist in there. I got it done by the first guy. Then a better portrait guy was in my unit, and I had him go back over it and made it look more like Trump.
Okay.
So
yeah, it totally looks like. I mean,
yeah, it looks like him now.
It totally looks like him.
pretty good. But anyway, yeah, it's fun.
All right, so Ron Paul.
Right. So worked for Ron Paul for
went
a year.
back to Vegas.
Right.
Did artistry.
Did artistry again.
And
law study for the LSAT. Then I applied for
LSAT,
law school.
Then you went to law school.
Right. Went to Yale Law School. I got into Harvard, Yale, University of Chicago, University of Virginia. I got into almost everywhere. I was waitlisted at Stanford, but I got into almost all of them, which was good. And then I just picked Yale because it's the most chill place to go to law school, for sure. Because
I won't be as humble as you on this one. Yale Law School, I think
it's rated number one
for decades at a minimum.
Right.
Has been rated the number one law school in the nation.
On the planet.
I mean, everybody and anybody that is a senior level head of state that has children want their child to go to the American Yale Law School.
Absolutely.
Bar none.
That's why
the most competitive program.
And no, it's not competitive. It's not competitive.
They have the lowest acceptance rate.
It's competitive to get in.
But
once you're in, it's chill as can be, which is why I like it.
Right, but you have to get in.
Right. Yeah, once you're in, though.
You have to score the highest of pretty much anybody.
You got to score really high on the LSAT, right.
Then you have to have a solid
straight
GPA.
A's. You got to have straight A background, right. And then you got to have something else that they look for. And the lady that did admissions, she told me that she followed the party model, which is if you're going to throw an interesting party and you wanted to have interesting guests and conversation, who would you invite? That's why, I'm from out west, from Las Vegas. My family background, my military background, my artist background. I put a copy of my At Liberty Leading the People sculpture on there.
Oh.
I'm no dummy, so I put that in there too. I attached that. A poem I'd written about my grandpa, the Filipino. So they like that. So they liked artistic people too. And the military veteran. I was like it was really weird because in Yale, it's, you ever seen the episode of Seinfeld where it's like Seinfeld at the opera? It's like, I feel pretty tough in this crowd. He's standing in the line at the opera and he feels pretty tough. It was kind of like that at Yale Law School. I'm like the knuckle dragger of the law school because, and I'm not a big guy or anything, but compared to all the other students, I'm like the toughest, most barbarian guy in the law school because I used to be a paratrooper.
Right. Because everyone else is, they're children of pedigree, right?
Yeah, they're like consultants, things like that. So their life experience is school, pretty much, and silver spoons,
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was good. Yeah.
So 3 years.
Yeah, I did 3 years of law school there. I taught volunteer self-defense.
So Yale Law School is located where?
In New Haven, Connecticut.
How did that compare to your experience in? You said Montana?
No. I grew up in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Yeah. I did not live in Montana until after law school.
Oh, after, okay.
Right. So I grew up in California and went to 5 high schools. So I bounced around. My mom bounced around a lot. And I'd go to my grandma and grandpa's place in California, Brentwood, California, went to high school there. For a while with my dad. They were divorced when I was 3 years old. With my dad in Arizona, went to high school in Mesa, Arizona. And then 3 high schools in Vegas, Vegas Valley and Clark High School. Because we bounced around. So my mom moved around a lot. She was a gypsy.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So 5 high schools. But anyway, law school
moved forward.
Yeah.
Went to law school 3 years. Tell us about your experience.
Well, I was in torch class with Guido Calabrese, my torch professor, first semester.
For those who don't know who Guido Calabrese is,
he was the Yale Law School dean, and he was also a Second Circuit appellate judge. I think he still is. But he was the reason why Yale Law School's chill. The first year or first semester is just there's no grades. It's just pass fail.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want you to worry about grades at all. That was his idea. It's like,
Yep.
hey, you guys get here, you're too hyper competitive. And students will create hierarchy out of whatever. Who gets to be a teacher assistant for this professor? And they rank each other according to these false hierarchies they create.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted the pressure off. He's like, hey, you've arrived. I want you to think about the law, like, philosophically, rather than trying to grade, ladder climb. So that's why he did that. So Guido was awesome. I love Guido. But I was in his first year torch class on September 11th. We'd only been in school like a week when the attack on the Twin Towers happened. A student came to the door and said, called the professor over to the door. I could hear him whispering, a plane is at the World Trade Center. And Guido's like, okay, and we all figured, okay, a small plane, right? So we're thinking like a Cessna or something. And then he comes back later and says a second plane hit the World Trade Center. And that's where we're like, oh, this is not an accident. Something's going on. So we all went down to the big auditorium. And it was actually pretty traumatic because they played, you get to see everything on the huge screen there live. And a lot of the students, they were from New York or had family in New York. And had family.
It's like an hour away.
Yeah, and they had family in the World Trade Center. So you had people, other students just collapsing when they saw the towers go down. They're just collapsing on the ground crying.
Because their parents were working at
or their brothers, right? And sisters and cousins. Yeah, they had family in those towers and in New York City. So it was pretty devastating for them, and it was just a devastating experience to see their trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and for all of us, of course, for every American. So that was a rough day. That was a bad day. So, but and that's the thing, man, is everything changed after that in a lot of ways. And sadly, because of that, that's when you had the Patriot Act and you had enemy combatant status and you had a lot of things the Bush administration did I guess you can say in reaction to 9/11, but we know it's more than that. These were agendas that were already in place. I think they wanted to have, the neocons, wanted it in place, and they just used 9/11 as their excuse to get what they already wanted. That's why a lot of this was pending legislation they've been wanting for years.
Now, you weren't just a regular traditional student at Yale. You told me the other day that you wrote something.
Well, right. So that's what I'm talking about. So I started when they started talking about, extraordinary rendition and military detention for even U.S. citizens like Jose Padilla and Yasser Hamdi. I was like one of the only voices in class going, this is not constitutional. You can't do this. You can't just grab an American and throw him in a military brig with no access to a lawyer, no right to a grand jury indictment, no right to a jury trial. And what's really weird is my professors were all about it. Like one of my professors, Owen Fiss, a procedure professor, he was all about it and all about extraordinary rendition. Huh?
Criminal procedure?
Civil procedure.
Civil procedure.
Right. But the point is that we were arguing in class because he's like, a lot of these professors, and Professor Fiss was no different. They basically said, hey, judges are the embodiment of public reason. That's what he said. A judge, a federal judge, is the embodiment of public reason. They worship judges, and they see judges as being infallible. So as long as a judge reviewed it and said it's okay, it doesn't matter if it violates the rest of the Bill of Rights. It was a really strange position I was in. But I was able to change his mind when I proved to him that extraordinary rendition, for example, was being used to facilitate torture. When we had examples come out where someone had been flown to Tunisia or wherever, Egypt, and had been tortured, then he switched his thoughts and opposed it because it ended in torture. So I had to show a bad outcome, not that it violated the Constitution. That should be your first line, right? I just show a bad outcome. Oh, well, this violation of the Constitution, oh, it's fine, as long as the judge says it's okay. But it's facilitating torture? Well, now I don't like it. It was really bizarre to see that happen with professors at Yale Law School. This goes to show you, this is a blind spot among our academic elite in this country, is that they really don't care about the Constitution. They worship, like I said, they worship judges. That's the oligarchy. Those are high priests that they worship. So in his class, to his credit though, I wrote we call it the supervised analytic writing project. I wrote about enemy combatant status. It's called Solving the Puzzle of Enemy Combatant Status. And it's still online. It's like you can still find it online. And I'll make sure it's posted after this. Folks can read it.
That's in the Yale Law School Journal?
No, it was a paper I wrote for his class.
Just for the class.
He was my mentor for the project, my supervisor for the project. And then it was a 94-page paper about enemy combatant status.
How many pages?
94 pages. 94 pages. So about why enemy combatant status applied to American citizens is unconstitutional and dangerous. And so I wrote that paper before the Supreme Court heard a case about it, the Yasser Hamdi case.
How ironic is this that you wrote that paper as it applies to enemy combatant status back in post 9/11?
2004, right before I graduated. Right.
How would you juxtapose that with how you were treated?
I was treated much the
January
same.
6th.
Yeah, it relates. Yeah. So, but I wrote that paper right before I graduated, and he submitted it. I didn't even know he did it. He just submitted it to a campus-wide contest for best paper on the Bill of Rights, the Judge William E. Miller Prize for best paper on the Bill of Rights, and it won. It won the prize.
Wow,
it was kind of nice, yeah. And then after that, they maybe
best law school in the world,
right?
And you win what prize?
The Judge William E. Miller Prize for best paper at Yale across the entire campus.
So we're not
on the Bill of Rights.
America, right. We're not talking to some schmuck here.
Well, I might be a schmuck, but I'm a pretty good schmuck. I wrote a pretty good paper. But yeah, won the best prize. I mean, here's a sad reality. This is during a conservative administration. I'm criticizing conservative administration. And some of the professors in there, like one of them was an uncle of George Bush, Judge Walker. He thought I was a leftist because I was criticizing his nephew, because I was criticizing Bush. I'm a libertarian. I'm a constitutionalist. I don't care what your party is. If you want the Constitution, I'm going to call you out. But because I was calling out a conservative administration, the leftist professors and students, loved me. They thought I was really cool. If it had been during the Obama administration, if Obama had been the one doing these things, it might have been a different outcome for me. But I was able to, I was there.
That's how you survived law school.
Well, I would have survived anyway.
Because of your strict stance on the
Constitution. But that's why I won that award, I think, is because that paper was criticizing President Bush and his policies. I'm being cynical, but I think it's probably accurate. Mm-hmm. Things have changed. And this is back in 2000s. College and law school were different back then. It was better than it is now. There was more free speech. I think now it's horrible. From what I can tell, it'd be awful.
Just a couple things I want to add to what we're talking about right now specifically is, so the Patriot Act comes out, and the Patriot Act actually expands this FISA court from 7 judges to 11 judges.
Right. That's a metastasization of FISA. Yeah.
Right. So not only do we create the TSA, right, and the Department of Homeland Security, and all these Fourth Amendment cases.
Right.
Don't jump ahead of me.
DHS.
I know you're going to talk about.
Right.
But before we go into that, when I started doing research on who was behind actually writing those laws, it comes from the Judiciary Committee on the House and the Senate. And when you look at the individuals that were part of it, at that very time, it was Mike Pence that was a junior congressman from Indiana that was on that committee, and he claims to be instrumentally involved in writing legislation for that. Just something to keep in mind as we fast forward and move towards.
That's the neoconservatives on the political right. And they're all about not just Pax Americana and national security, but they're all about what they call the unitary executive and expanding executive power. And that was the claimed power that was.
Go into that.
Right. So like
unitary executive.
So and that, there's some credence to that. It's like, okay, Article 2 grants the president specific powers as commander in chief and as the head of all the departments in the executive branch. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that. But what they do is they take that and they call it the unitary executive, but they really kind of claim that, well, this actually gives him powers that are even not enumerated, like over war. We could say, well, under his power to defend the country, he can wage war. Doesn't need a congressional declaration of war. He can just kind of do it on his own. That's the claim. And within that sphere, he can really do what he wants. So, for example, if in the war on terror, which is a war on tactic, but if in the war on terror, the president or one of his, flunkies decides that you are an enemy combatant, that you're actually a enemy opponent in the war on terror, he now can take you and put you in a category of enemy combatant, which means you're basically the same as a foreign enemy in wartime. He can take you and put you in a military brig. You have no rights. And of course, they accuse you if they say you violated the laws of war, as you know, if you're not wearing insignia visible from a distance, under a chain of command that's responsible over you, etc., you're not protected by the laws of war. So you can be shot. That's been the historic pattern throughout time.
That's essentially what happened. Remember when Obama I mean, we'll find this out hopefully with these declassifications that John Brennan, the CIA director, used drones to go ahead and murder al-Awlaki,
Right.
American citizen,
And his
no due process,
and his teenage son. And his teenage son. Right.
So
American citizen. Al-Awlaki's son was a citizen. Right.
American citizen, and guess who was the only member of Congress to stand on the floor for an entire snow day, Wednesday? I can't remember exactly when that was, where he went, I think, for 22 hours. Ron Paul's son.
Rand Paul, right.
Went for 22 hours on the Senate floor.
About that point.
On a filibuster about that specific point.
It's an American citizen.
Completely unconstitutional and illegal for an American president to go ahead and order his CIA director to go ahead and use a drone to murder with no due process an American citizen abroad. Yeah. That's vigilantism.
Two.
At the max.
Al-Awlaki and his teenage son. His teenage son was also smoked with a Predator drone strike. Right. And so people, and this is what's weird about it back then. I remember even arguing with my family members. I have an uncle I love, but he's like, but they're terrorists. They don't deserve a trial. Well, how do you know they're terrorists? Because someone said they're terrorists? This relates to J6 too.
Right.
It drives me crazy. How do you know they're guilty of any of these things just because they're accused of it, right?
Right.
Like with, hey, call it where I see it. J.D. Vance getting on Fox News saying, well, those who committed violence that day, well, how do you know they committed violence? Because they were accused of it?
And there was no fair trial. There was
no fair trial
process.
So
the evidence, the exculpatory evidence wasn't available.
All kinds of
released.
problems.
You still haven't seen the CCTV footage.
No, I haven't seen
from the U.S. Capitol
Police.
But yet you were convicted.
Right. So, right. My point is that
I'm agreeing with you.
There's a reaction people have like a jerk reaction, knee-jerk reaction. Well, if they're a terrorist, they don't deserve a jury trial, or if you're a this or that, if you've been convicted or whatever. So whether you're actually guilty or not. So the thing about enemy combatant status is that designation takes you, it's like once they accuse you of being something, before you've ever had any due process or proof that you are that, they take you and put you in that category as if you already are that. Mm-hmm. You are now an enemy in wartime. We can take you to a military brig, no access to a lawyer, no grand jury indictment, no opportunity to confront.
Nothing.
No, nothing.
There's not even like an inkling,
no jury trial
process.
Right. No jury trial. So when that happened, of course, Professor Fisk and other professors like that. Well, we at least didn't have a judge involved in this. Okay, great. We'll let a judge like Will Casey from New York, right? Conservative judge. We'll have a judge rubber stamp what we do. That doesn't solve the problem. You're still violating the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Article 3 of the Constitution, Article 3, the treason clause spells out what you do with an American that's accused of making war in the United States or aiding the enemy. It says that it requires extra evidentiary burden of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or confession in open court. And the reason why the founders put that there, they knew that the charge of treason is the worst charge, and they want to make sure you're not being tortured in confessing. They want to make sure it's not just trumped up nonsense. You need 2 witnesses to the same overt act with an act element. Okay, we can fast forward to what I was charged with, because this conspiracy has no act element. Okay, it has no act element. It doesn't require 2 witnesses in the same overt act. It's just, that's why they wrote it during the Civil War, was to get around the treason clause. Let's just set that aside for a second. So with enemy combatant status with the Bush administration, it directly violated Article 3 of the treason clause directly, and also violated, of course, the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment. I pointed out that's like, look, American citizen, you put him on trial for treason, as the treason clause says. That's what you do with an American accused of this. And I wrote a big long paper about how Lincoln was the first one to directly violate this standard in the Constitution. He did that with not just habeas suspension. People know about that, right? Mm-hmm. And after the habeas suspension, Congress enacted, he did that on his own, but Congress did enact a habeas statute that said you could hold someone for 30 days without indictment, but after 30 days, you must either release them or indict them. That was a statute written by Congress during the Civil War. But Lincoln just went ahead and under his authority as the military leader, as commander-in-chief, he went ahead and kept on holding people from the North who were accused of aiding the South. He held them as unlawful combatants in wartime. That's the first example. Not the Southerners who had broken away and founded their own country, but the people in the North that he accused of being allies with the South. So that was grossly unconstitutional. 15,000 people held like that for years. About 5,000 of them were tried by military tribunal. And that's the issue that came to the Supreme Court in 1866 with Ex parte Milligan. He was on death row basically for a military tribunal found him guilty of aiding the Southerners. And so he went to the Supreme Court and actually won. This is one of those rare instances. Our pattern in history is that during wartime, we tend to throw the Constitution in the trash in the name of winning the war, right? That's just what happens. It's just human nature. When you're under emergency and a lot of fear, you tend to do things, like 9/11. You tend to do things that you shouldn't be doing.
9/11, January 6th.
All that stuff. The more the fear is.
COVID.
Right, exactly. All this emergency power stuff. And that's when we tend to have our darkest chapters in our history. Like the Korematsu decision in World War II that upheld the mass internment of Japanese Americans, including U.S. citizens. It's ridiculous that they could even justify that. It makes no sense. But that's what happens, is that they tend to do that. So Ex parte Milligan was a rare example of the Supreme Court adjudicating an emergency power case, but after the emergency is over, like 1866, after the Civil War is over. So that's where, calmer heads are now prevailing. They can say, okay, we can
it's easier to adjudicate.
Put the genie back in the bottle. Let's fix this. Yeah. So which is good.
Similar to the 1512 issue, right?
In a way,
not exactly,
in a way, but sure. They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. They should go all the way. And the seditious conspiracy statute that was written in the Civil War, that laid around like a loaded gun, used against me and others, I think that needs to go away. It's ridiculous. Got all kinds of problems. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So while you were doing your research for this 94-page paper that you won accolades for at the most prestigious law school on the planet,
right?
Who else out there since then has written a substantive piece of that length?
Judge Alito, his dissent in the Hamdi case, Judge Alito and Scalia. Judge Scalia and Alito dissented in the Hamdi case. And this is like,
what year was that?
2004, like right after I wrote this paper. Sadly, the Supreme Court affirmed this extraordinary power in the hands of the president in the Hamdi case, which was a disaster. And it's still laying there. It's still good case law, but it's very, very dangerous.
Give us a brief synopsis of the Hamdi case.
Well, American citizen accused of aiding Al Qaeda, held in a military brig with no access to an attorney, no jury trial, and slated to be tried by military tribunal. In this case, went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld that. So Judge Thomas, I love Judge Thomas. Justice Thomas is awesome, but in that case, he got it completely wrong. And I blame John Yoo, because John Yoo used to be his law clerk. John Yoo, another Yale Law graduate, was a big-time neoconservative in the Bush administration pushing this doctrine. That's where I think it came from, frankly, it's John Yoo. So, he's famous for, in this one debate he had with somebody, he was presented with a hypothetical. So, okay, would it be constitutional or under the president's authority for him to order his child's testicles to be crushed to make the father talk? And John Yoo's response was, well, it depends upon why the president believed that was necessary. So he didn't want to consent that could see with that ground that would be wrong. That he thought that'd be, well, if the president thinks it's necessary, then it's okay to crush a child's testicles to make his father talk in the war on terror. This is about the road leads. It basically says the president can do whatever he wants because, hey, if you're under the laws of war, you are a combatant, but you're not obeying the laws of war because you're not wearing a recognizable insignia. You're not under a recognized chain of command that's responsible for you. But you're not complying with the laws of war, carrying weapons openly, and things like that. Well, now you're not protected by the laws of war, so you're an unlawful enemy combatant, and there's really nothing they can't do to you. They can just shoot you on the spot. They can just drone strike you.
How does that apply to family members?
Well, right? Like I said, if the president thinks it's necessary, he can crush a child's testicles to make his father talk. So it leads on all the torture stuff. So the idea really is that president in warfare, can just do whatever he wants to win the war. That's that.
Based on national security grounds.
That's unitary executive run rampant. Like, as the commander in chief, he can just do whatever he wants.
Just wanton lawlessness.
And not just to people in another country, but to American citizens also. That was the claim in Hamdi. And in the Padilla case, Jose Padilla is another American citizen accused of aiding Al Qaeda. And they said the same thing there. It doesn't make a difference whether he's an American citizen or not. What counts is what he's accused of doing. If he's accused of violating the laws of war, then he falls under the laws of war jurisdiction. We'll put him over in this box over here. So it's like Alice in Wonderland. As soon as they say you are a terrorist, or it was actually some designation provided by some lower administrative guy in the executive branch. We think this person is a terrorist.
Do you think that some of that same precedent was used by referring to the terrorism enhancements?
I think it's the same. It's the same mindset.
Same logic, I guess.
It's the same mindset. The mindset is well, of course you don't deserve any rights because you're a terrorist. Well, how do you know we're a terrorist? Because I say so. That's pretty much what it's like. So that's what was done during the Bush administration.
Because I'm your political opponent, and I decided that that's the case. That's basically what happened.
That's where it leads. So this is the big point I tried to make to conservatives back then. Is like, look, guys, you are unleashing the executive branch to do whatever it needs to that you think is right to stop Islamic terrorism. You're just DHS, the national security letters from the FBI, they can write their own search warrants. You're letting them just have carte blanche in the name of national security. This is my uncle and I got in a bad argument. I almost kicked him out of my house. He was visiting my family in Montana, and he's like, "What do you want to see? Mushroom clouds over American City? You know, because like, hey, if we don't do this, we're going to have mushroom clouds over American cities. We have to start doing this. You know, that's the mindset. We got to do whatever it takes to win." And so they're willing to tear down all the restrictions on government power in the name of getting the terrorists. That was the mindset among conservatives. And I'm like, hey, I'm not going to rip apart the Constitution I swore to defend because you're scared. I'm not going to do that.
That's what just happened the last,
The
last 8 years, we just saw a group of our government, society, and our institutions in the name of winning in the TDS, right? They're willing to violate any law, principle, norm, anything.
Right.
To include mass executions with the whole COVID con to go after their number one political opponent, threat, and I guess individual in power and movement that can expose their corruption.
Sure. And the point I'm trying to make is that conservatives are vulnerable to it too. If you can scare a conservative enough with the boogeyman of, I'm not saying there aren't real Islamic terrorists, there really are.
With the boogeyman Stewart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers.
No, but a conservative is scared by the boogeyman of Al Qaeda or ISIS or whatever. You can get them to sign on to any destruction of the Bill of Rights that you want. That's just reality. That's what happened after 9/11. Then all of that, and I kept warning them, look, man, everything that's being built up in the name of fighting the war on terror is going to be swung inward on you. It's going to happen. And then Obama wins, and wham! All these people were like, oh my God, I didn't know we would be giving this guy that kind of power. And Obama did start to turn it inward. You know, it was not as bad as Biden.
When did you notice that change during the Obama presidency?
Well,
what year?
As soon as he got elected, it was really, really strange because, like I said, all these conservatives who have been kind of asleep at the switch because they trusted Bush. It goes back to like with the judge. Well, I trust judges. We're embodiment of public reason. We're cool with that. I'm my professor. But you trust your guy with that kind of power. But as soon as the next guy gets in, you're like, oh, I didn't want him to have that power. So that with Obama, it's kind of poetic justice. They got a radical Muslim communist. Is what Obama really was. You know, he was raised as a Muslim, but he's also a communist.
Well, you got Brennan in there that's guiding.
Used to be a communist.
Quite a bit.
Right. So my point is that they, in the name of the war on terror, they created this massive monster that was then swung inward on conservatives. And I knew that was going to happen. But it's like, I feel like Cassandra from the ancient Greek tale of Troy. Cassandra is the daughter of the king of Troy. And she's both gifted and cursed. She can see the future. That's her gift. But her curse is that no one will believe her when she says this is going to happen. She can warn them, but they won't believe her. That's kind of how I felt. It's like, I can see where this is going. But you won't listen to me until you experience it. That's what we have.
It's lonely being first, right?
Well, it sucks. But hey, Judge Scalia was on it, and Judge Alito were on it. Judge Thomas was drinking the Kool-Aid. I love Judge Thomas. Man, I don't know what's going on with him. In that time, probably because of the war on terror, he was drinking the Kool-Aid. And to be fair to him, Scalia had done something very similar in the drug war. In that race case, the case of a woman who had cancer, growing marijuana in her own backyard in California, nothing to do with interstate commerce, just for her own consumption. Because Scalia doesn't like drugs, he sided with the leftists in stomping out any kind of the reform of the Commerce Clause claim power. You know, Commerce Clause has been their excuse for growing government power exponentially for decades and decades. So, since Wickard versus Filbert, the case out of the Depression, the wheat farmer growing wheat on his own farm, this will have an effect on commerce. Therefore, we can regulate anything that has an effect on commerce, right? So the Supreme
And
Court.
you can argue anything, Ken.
Right. So the Supreme
At that
Court.
point, then it's unlimited. Then there are no checks and balances.
That's what they did
or limitations on federal government action.
And they did that for decades and decades until the Lopez case, which was one about a gun near a school zone. And the Supreme Court said, wait a minute, what's the relationship? How does a gun near a school zone affect commerce? And the argument was, well, it affects education. It causes fear among the students, so therefore they don't get as good an education, so they don't get as good a job. And they're like, this is ridiculous. And anything can affect commerce. Yep. So they started trimming it back in Lopez, which was great. But then came the race case with lady growing her own marijuana in her own backyard. And in that case, Scalia, who had been all with Thomas about, trimming back the commerce power, claim power, he was all about it because it was drugs. Didn't like drugs. So he ruled with the leftists that, oh yes, this has an impact, that her growing her own marijuana had an impact on the illegal marijuana market. So it had an effect on commerce in the illegal marijuana market. So therefore Congress can regulate her growing her own marijuana. This is nuts. My point is that Scalia, once again, it's about their personal buttons. Scalia, a drug lawyer, lost it on that one. Thomas, national security guy at the time, lost it when it came to the Hamdi case. No one's perfect. Judges are people too.
That's the main point there.
Yeah.
So 2004.
But I really, frankly, man, I think that's why Scalia was murdered. I think they wanted to get rid of him because he bucked against them on a central element that they wanted, which was this unrestricted power in wartime. I think they didn't like the fact that he was, along with Alito, was pushing back on that. That's what I think. I really do. Because I think he was murdered. Beyond a doubt, he was murdered.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap up, 2004.
Right.
You finished law school, and then from there you
so after I won that award, they made me a Yale research scholar. Something I forgot I can add to my resume. So I was a Yale research scholar to write a book about that, about enemy combatant status, about their application of the laws of war to American citizens. Never finished the book. My mother was diagnosed with cancer, and I had to switch gears. But right after that, I went to Arizona, and I clerked for the Arizona Supreme Court for a year. For a Vietnam veteran in a wheelchair, Michael D. Ryan, was a justice.
Arizona Supreme Court.
Arizona Supreme Court, right? Because I'd gone to high school in Mesa. I was thinking about making Arizona home, be my family. So we went to the Arizona Supreme Court for a year. Worked for them.
Is there any case that you that's memorable?
Well,
that you worked on?
Yeah, he's a great judge. But once again, this kind of goes to show, the fact that judges are people. Judges are people, and they're going to rule the way they want to rule. And I learned that in law school from watching my professors. Most of them were judges, reading all the case law. But I also experienced it on the Arizona Supreme Court. I love my judge, great man. But we had a case of a man who had murdered people in a pizza joint. He'd gone in there and shot the place up. But on review, there were problems in the trial. And on review, following the case law, I said, okay, he deserves another trial. They didn't follow the rules about how you conduct a trial respecting his constitutional rights, both under U.S. Constitution and the Arizona State Constitution. And yes, he had petitioned for a new trial. He does deserve a new trial. So I'm just following the case law. The judge took that, and next thing I know, he gave it to the other law clerk to finish it. And he wrote it the other way. But no, his petition for a new trial is denied. So why is that? Because that's the outcome the judge wanted. That's just the way it is, So the judges give their law clerks write the opinions, but the judge will decide which clerk to give it to. Or if you write something that he doesn't like, he'll just give it to somebody else. That's just reality. That's what he did. Doesn't make him a bad person. Just makes him a human being. But just, I just realized, I knew it already, but it's just confirmation of the reality that the law really is whatever the judges say it is. Not legitimately, but the Constitution, the old saying that the Constitution is whatever the judges say it is, I don't like that. But in practicality, de facto, that's how it really is. It winds up being that way. And I think that's really a problem, frankly.
Now, while you were in law school, were there any fellow classmates that are prominent individuals today or since then?
I don't think so. I mean, it was really a strange experience because I'm a libertarian. Like one of my best friends there was a Jewish girl from New York who was also a dual citizen of Israel, right? Very far left. But the lefty students, I joined the Federal Society when I was at Yale Law School, right? And it was started by a conservative and a libertarian. So I started going to the Federal Society meetings, but because of the whole war on terror thing, I'm looking around the room and going, I don't recognize these people anymore. They've all turned into friggin' Nazis. I mean, like, and I don't like to use that term, but they were like all about this hyper national security, power of the executive, and they really were very fascist in their mindset. So I just can't do it anymore. I can't be around these people. Not racist, but just hyper national security. The leader can do whatever he wants in the name of the war on terror. I can't do it. So I actually hung out more with leftist students. Some of my best friends there were pretty far left because they were opposing the Bush administration, and so was I. So we had a lot of common ground, and they could tolerate me because I'm a libertarian. They're like, okay, so right. I want to legalize drugs. I'm much more of a, you have an individual right to do what you want with your body. If you want to poison with drugs, that's up to you. That's how I feel about it. I still feel that way because the war on drugs is an absolute disaster. I mean, there's drugs all over the prison. Prison I'm at, guys bouncing off the walls, collapsing on the pod, high on drugs. You can't keep drugs out of the prison. It's an absolute failure. What's the point in trying to stop it through criminal law? It doesn't work anyway. So that's kind of a tangent, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So I got along with the lefties because I was opposing Bush administration. I still have to wonder if it had been during Obama. I got a feeling the other way around. All of a sudden they'd switched. Like, oh no, you can't question our leader. That's what they did. And it would be the conservatives going, well, yes, of course we have to question the leader. It's like a big football stadium. One half of the audience has their face painted red. Other half has their face painted blue. When the red team has the ball, they can do no wrong. We don't care about the rule book. Who are you to tell us what we can and can't do? And the blue side is screaming and pointing at the rule book going, wait a minute, you're violating the rule book. Referee. And then when the blue team gets the ball, all of a sudden it's like, hey, ref, that's a bad call. And what about the rule book? Rule book's the Constitution. That's just how it is. This is human nature. So, but the big picture is who owns the stadium, right? So the uniparty and the elite own both parties. They own the whole stadium. And so they don't care about the rule book at all. And they love it when you cheer for your team to violate the rule book, and they just create their power. It's a one-way ratchet. When the Republicans are in power, they'll increase the power of the executive branch in the name of national security. And then when the Democrats get in, the left gets in, they'll use that power against you, against the conservatives. They love it when you guys do that. They love it when you just give them more power. But both sides will always ratchet the power up whenever they're in power. So very few will ever say, no, we're going to trim it back. That's why I like what President Trump is doing. I like Tulsi Gabbard being there. I like Robert Kennedy Jr. I like Pete Hegseth. I like guys that I think are much more legitimately constitutionalist. Like old school Democrats like Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr. That's my kind of Democrat. And old school, I would call them old school conservatives, like Kash Patel. People like that are distrustful of extreme power in the hands of the executive branch. And I think President Trump also falls in that category now too. He'll learn a lot, I think. Absolutely.
You want to take a 2-minute break
before
we continue?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right.
How's that so far? Good?
Excellent.
Now they get to see Stewart Rhodes, the intellectual, right?
Yeah.
Rather than the barbarian.